DMNPCs. We talk about them a lot in this campaign, they constantly come up. A DM creates an NPC that becomes the main focus of the campaign and takes the spotlight away from the players. An NPC that ruins the entire campaign and all the fun of the party, blah 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 blah. Those things are bad. They're really bad. They do ruin the campaign. If the players no longer have the spotlight, they're not going to have nearly as much fun as when they're, the main characters, a player character's proper role. But NPC tagalongs, NPC companions, these things are not rare at all. For a while, I was afraid to make NPC companions in fear of creating a DM NPC on accident, which was one of the worst things I ever did. I have learned a lot of lessons about creating NPC allies, and today I want to share a few of them. So here's how to create NPC allies for your D&D party without creating the DM NPC. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so let's get this right out of the way, right out of the gate. Like I said before, an NPC can never take the spotlight away from the main characters. Now that's not to say NPCs can't have development, can't have scenes where they're important, but they should never feel like the main characters of the campaign. In my first campaign, there were multiple NPCs that had character development over the course of the campaign, and as such, they did have important moments. My favorite NPC, and I've talked about her before, is Kalia Solfero. She had a lot of character development over the course of the campaign, and it showed. The characters and the players, more importantly, really liked her. But she never took the spotlight away from them. It never felt like Kalia was more important than the player characters. She was an ally, a side character, someone who assisted the party. She was part of the cast, but she wasn't taking the spotlight. That is what is important. Now, how do you know if your player characters are having the spotlight taken away from them? How do you know if your NPC is taking too much space and too much time? Well, a good rule of thumb is to ask your players. It seems silly. I know it seems silly. I get it. But frankly, just asking your party, hey guys, do you feel like so-and-so is taking up too much space? Is the best way to figure out if your party feels like this character is taking up too much room. Is it foolproof? No, some players don't feel comfortable, but if you say something along the lines of, hey guys, I feel like this NPC is taking up a lot of time, do you feel the same way? That is a great way to break the ice, so to speak. If you have a little bit of self-criticism, then the other players are comfortable criticizing in turn. And I know criticizing feels hostile, it feels like they're attacking you, but do not take it like that. Worst thing you could do. They're just trying to make the campaign better. You're just trying to make the campaign better. Everyone benefits from a good campaign. There is nothing wrong with that. So please, if you tell your players that you feel like an NPC is taking too much space and they respond with yes, they are, then please take that advice. Don't kill off the NPC or anything like that. Your players might like them, but minimize their role a little bit and make sure that they don't have as much scenes, or any scenes at all, where they take the spotlight away from the player characters. And if your party responds with, no, I think this NPC is taking up just the right amount of space, then great, you're doing your job right. Alright, I talked about character development, and I think that's a big part of what makes an ally NPC, an NPC that tags along with the party, so fun, so notable. Having a character that develops over the course of the campaign for the better, or sometimes even for the worse, can make them very interesting and very compelling for your players. But how do you do that? It's really hard to develop a character in a D&D campaign for a player, let alone for an NPC who is not going to have nearly as much time. Remember, they are not the main character like we said before, at least ideally, so you need to put this character development into a very limited amount of time. How do you do that? Now keep in mind, I am no author. I cannot write. I'm actually quite miserable at it, but I do know a couple of tricks on how to get your NPC to develop over the course of the campaign. For starters, I said this for the villains, and it applies to NPCs as well. Have them talk during combat. Combat lasts a really long time. It is a lot of real estate that goes to waste if you do not use it to develop characters. Having your NPCs speak to the party during combat is so important to developing them. Also, while we're on the subject, their actions during combat can show that development as well. If an NPC starts out a little bit more abrasive to the party, they're not going to heal player characters as often. But as the campaign progresses, perhaps this NPC starts putting themselves between the party and the monster more often, starts using healing spells, starts assisting them more. There is nothing better than a support NPC supporting the party. It makes the party love them all the more, for starters, but also it shows development. An NPC with these support skills wouldn't use them on the party early on, but as the campaign progresses, maybe they start to do that more often. It is a great way to develop characters even with limited amounts of time. Also, use the scenes that NPCs are in very smart. Make sure that not a word is wasted. If players go to speak to an NPC, go out of their way to seek them out and talk to them, that means they want to have some content there. Prepare something in advance. If you have a suspicion, even a small one, that a player character or a player might go and speak to an NPC, then prepare something. Take some notes. Say, hey, this NPC is going to be looking at a picture of their dead family this time, or hey, this NPC is going to be cooking a hot meal for the party as a surprise this time, to show a little bit of that development. It can go a long way to make sure that the time you do have with this NPC is not wasted and the development feels like it's going along smoothly, that it is progressing. This one is what I'm taking advantage of recently, but random NPC encounters. My party have a ship called the Jack Carlo with various different crew members, and I've written a number of random encounters with each of the NPCs. Some of them cater to specific players, some of them are for the whole party, but since the ship has to travel for multiple days, I say, on the second day, you see this NPC doing this. A great example that happened quite recently is the party were on a long voyage, and one of the NPCs, a little girl named Charlotte, had just gone through a very traumatic event. Her home had been attacked by the church, and her mom had been attacked by some guards. And it was really hard for her because she's literally like 10. So she was out on the bow of the ship just looking out at the ocean, and one of the players saw her and decided to have a conversation with her. That was a random encounter that I had written. It simply read, Charlotte goes and looks at ocean. That's it. But it spurred a really, really great scene between Charlotte and the players. Or one player specifically, Eska, but besides that, this can be done to great effect. If you have a lot of downtime in your D&D campaign, filling in with random NPC encounters can 1. Spice up your campaign, 2. Get that character development in there, and 3. Serve to endear the NPCs to your party. They are perfect. I love using these. I love writing these too. Just simple phrases can go a long way in creating a cool scene for you and the players. Finally, don't make them too powerful in combat, or don't have them fight at all. I have a lot of NPCs on that ship, and a number of them can fight normal guards, but remember, player characters aren't usually fighting normal guards, they're fighting powerful monsters, so I usually have NPCs that just stay back on the ship and manage things. Some NPCs can fight more supernatural threats, but I make sure that they never fight better than the party. That's really important. Now, of course, you don't want your NPCs to be so incredibly weak that they don't do anything. That's no fun. One of my NPCs is a vampire by the name of Tylom. He has aligned himself with the party, and he is pretty damn strong. He can rip a guard in half with his bare hands because, he's a vampire. But remember, the party can also very easily kill a guard in 1 to 2 hits at this point. So having him kill a guard isn't really that big of a deal. It shows off his power, but it's clear that the party could take him if they teamed up against him. He's not too strong to the point where it's like, oh, why doesn't this vampire guy just do all the work? He's not that strong. The party still need to lead the charge, and overall, they, united, are definitely more powerful than him. And some of them can take him in a 1v1 easily as well. It's really hard to measure power level in D&D, for God's sakes. Wizards of the Coast can't even do it properly. I mean, seriously, have you seen challenge ratings? But, okay, look, that aside, a really good rule of thumb is to 1, use average damage to see how much damage the monster or NPC does on average, and also, if you do use something like D&D Beyond to create your NPCs kind of like a player character, then make sure they're a lower level than the party. That is a great, easy way to make sure that none of them outstrip the party in power level. If you've played the game Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, you would know how damn disappointing it is to have an NPC tag-along be more powerful than you. Don't fall into that trap in your D&D games. And that's where we're going to end it for today. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Tabletop Tavern Tips, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more content from me, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Mystic Quest to reference one of the worst games ever in terms of NPCs power levels. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.